Continue to drag their feet, Mr. Speaker, but there's been another blow to the Prime Minister's carbon tax scheme. A new report from the Parliamentary Budget Officer shows yet again that Canadians are worse off under this tax. Here's what the total bill will be when the NDP Liberals finish quadrupling this tax. It'll cost people in Ontario $1,400, $1,500 in Newfoundland, and a whopping $2,000 in Saskatchewan. Canadians are already struggling with higher costs, higher groceries, and higher mortgage rates. The last thing they need is another bill from a useless carbon tax. If the government's so sure that Canadians support the tax, why not let the people decide in a carbon tax election?
Mr. Speaker, let me read you the first paragraph of the PBO's report, and I quote, "Considering only the fiscal impact of federal fuel charge, PBO estimates that average household in each of the backstop provinces in 2030-31 will see a net gain, receiving more from the Canada Carbon Rebate than the total amount they pay in federal fuel charge and related GST." Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition should apologize to Canadians for misleading them all these months.
The Minister might want to read the rest of the report, because in the quote he cited, he focused on a very key word: only the direct costs. When you factor in all the economic costs, it costs the Canadian household $1,400. Canadians are net losers under this carbon tax scheme, and this minister knows it. So, if he's so sure that Canadians want this government to keep quadrupling the tax, why not let the people decide in a carbon tax election?
Let me read you another paragraph from the report, Mr. Speaker. Moreover, in 2030-31, for all backstop provinces, we estimate that the average household in each income quintile will see a net gain, except for average household in the highest income quintile, Mr. Speaker. You know what the Leader of the Opposition is doing? He wants to take money away from the middle class and poorer Canadians to protect his rich CEO friends. That's what he's doing, Mr. Speaker.
Is trying very hard to get Canadians not to understand the details. But the details are, and the facts are, that the Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed what Canadians already know. Exactly. They're being robbed by a carbon tax, which is driving up the cost of groceries, of gas, and everyday essentials. In fact, a family in Prince Edward Island will pay almost $1,200 a year when the NDP Liberals quadruple the carbon tax. Canadians don't support the carbon tax. We know 10 provinces don't support the carbon tax. Will the Prime Minister listen to Canadians and call a carbon tax election?
The member talks about the agricultural sector. Well, let's talk about the climate impacts on the agricultural sector, Mr. Speaker. Droughts in 2021 resulted in 27% decline in Canada's grain production. Over the last decade, over 200 Canadian farmers have experienced cost increases and revenue loss from climate impacts, Mr. Speaker. This member and this party never talks about the impacts of climate change on farmers, on the price of food in Canada. They want to try and make us believe that climate change isn't happening. It is happening, and on this side of the House, we're here for Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
The minister is either living in denial or purposely misleading Canadians, because the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report is clear. It costs Canadians more to pay the carbon tax than what they get back in rebates. But if the minister doesn't believe me, I would encourage him to read the Parliamentary Budget report. But in the essence of time, let me help out. Page 19 states Canadians are worse off paying the carbon tax, period. That is the fact. But again, if the minister is so confident that Canadians support this carbon tax, why are they so afraid to call a carbon tax election?
The member points to indirect costs, Mr. Speaker. Let's talk about indirect costs. Loss of revenue of $150 million in 2023 due to flooded in farmlands across this country, Mr. Speaker. The dairy farmers, egg farmers of Canada, grain growers, Canal Council all support our plan to fight climate change. It's time for the Conservative Party of Canada to come on board, Mr. Speaker.